Hello one and all, Jasper here, and I hate isekais. For those of you who don't know what an isekai is, it's a subgenre of fantasy, where a character is suddenly sent from their own world to another, often unfamiliar world. There are many great stories that follow under this category that I know you've heard of: Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, Narnia, and plenty of others. Though, unsurprisingly, given the origins of this word being Japanese, roughly translating to a different world or other world, it is more heavily associated in this day and age with Japanese anime, and for the past decade has heavily dominated the market, and most of them are shit. They always seem to miss the mark for me, despite my love for fantasy. A protagonist that you're supposed to be able to insert yourself as, resulting in a bland character with no personality of their own, often having some sort of unique power that makes them super special and overpowered, and the most damning of all, the fact that they are from another world doesn't matter at all. You could cut that aspect of the story and nothing changes. At least some of the older stories have the goal of getting back home, but because so many isekai these days are power fantasies, wanting to get back to the old life wouldn't work. Now, why am I telling you all this? To show you how much of an uphill battle this show had in making me tolerate it, let alone like it. Yet despite it all, Mushoku Tensei is one of the greatest shows I've ever watched. With the second season being announced and probably already partly out by the time this video is published, I decided to jump into this show. Garnt, owner of the YouTube channel Giguk, sang its praises, and despite him being known for watching every trash isekai, stuff that makes me want to call the FBI, and having the worst Game of Thrones takes I have ever heard in my life,
I prefer the later seasons of Game of Thrones.
Fuck off.
I do respect him in regards to reviewing media, though the real motivation was when my own brother recommended it as well, and so I hopped on and watched. About 2 years later, and mostly because I heard about the second season coming out, and holy shit, this show really is amazing. Everything about this series is top notch, and the quality just astounds me. Let me start with animation, because I can easily just show you how gorgeous it is. It's not just the big climactic battles or the main emotional moments that the animation takes off. It's pretty much every single scene. A simple dance, a low-stakes sparring match, the basic casting of spells, fucking eating bread. Every moment of the show is breathtaking. You can take a screenshot at almost any moment and mount it on your wall. And if the random clips you're seeing now aren't enough to convince you, then make a LASIK appointment because you can't see for shit. Not since the Fate series have I been blown away by the beauty of a lot of pictures moving by really fast, and I pray they can keep the quality moving forward. But now we move on to the less visual aspects. Let's talk the story. An overweight leech of a human being ends up getting hit by a truck. So far, very formulaic. We've seen this plenty of times before. As he dies, he is reincarnated into a baby and given a new name and life, that of Rudius Greyrat. A very fitting name, especially that rat part, but more on that later. In this new fantasy world, he learns about magic, harnesses the powers, and proves to be a prodigy in this regard at a very young age. Oh shit. Hits the OP alarm. Look, I know I just said I had an issue with the OP protagonist, but at least let me finish explaining why it's not nearly as bad as you think it may be. For starters, his fantastic gift with magic, as well as being a pretty smart guy, makes sense. He isn't really a child after all. He's a 40-year-old man reincarnated, and thus his high intelligence and gift with magic is hardly earth-shattering. Plus, even with this gift and advantage, the guy still has weaknesses and struggles. There are plenty of characters who I am confident can plant his face firmly into the ground, and those around him don't feel like lesser or pointless characters. At worst, I think he is an overpowered character done right, but it's debatable if he really is overpowered. And since we already touched on it, let's talk about his past life a bit, and how it does have an effect on the story. Of course, his true age and maturity justifies the fact that he is a prodigy, but he still carries the scars of his former life. The bullying, the abuse. It's to such an extent that even in this new world, he is scared to go outside his new home, and even the surrounding village at first. He works through most of it with help from the sidecast. Speaking of, let's talk about the sidecast a bit. There are a ton of characters at different levels of prominence, but the most prominent of them all would be Eris, introduced to us as the fire redheaded cunt that develops slowly into being less of a bitch. I started out hating her, but that beginning hatred did blossom into respect and love as she developed into a far more interesting and entertaining character. Ryujerd, or however you fucking pronounce that, is probably my favorite character, and I love his motivation for helping out others. Plus, it's always nice to see someone fight with a spear-like weapon. So many people use swords, and it's nice to see other weapons get some proper screen time. There are plenty of other characters, too many to list, but I enjoy most of them. Even Rudius' new father, who is honestly quite a bastard, but the human moments you get with him are still great. My favorite scene in the entire show is when he reunites with Rudius after a magical incident separates everyone. I won't spoil it, but it's quite the treat. The world building itself is also great, setting up all sorts of different cultures, powers, skills, and kingdoms, on top of plenty of mysteries and questions, both magical and politically related, and I can't wait to see the true scale and size of the story we are about to get in the second season. However, now we arrive at my biggest issue with the series, and it might surprise you considering how much I've been praising it so far, but it's in regards to Rudius. You see, Rudius is a pedo. Rudius, like many anime characters, has the characteristic of almost always being horny and taking any chance he can get to peek at or snatch some panties. But hey, this isn't all it takes to push me away from a character. Brooke and Sanjay have this aspect about them, and I still enjoy them. But unlike those two, Rudius' horny actions are not directed to adult women. Hell, at one point he even thinks about raising a friend to be the perfect wife. First time I ever watched a series with a protag thinks about grooming. And it's a pretty serious issue for me because in my eyes, it turns actual romantic moments into creepy shit that makes me want to cave this fucker's head in. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jasper, you watch Game of Thrones, which has rape, pedos, incest, and rape pedo incest. Why is this bit too much for you? For me, there was never a point where I was conflicted in regards to the character doing these actions. In Game of Thrones, at least. Jaime Lannister, Ramsay Bolton, and Craster, in my books, are all horrible human beings who I would not hesitate to put down like a dog. Though, I can still acknowledge that Jaime has shades of grey, Ramsay is entertaining, and Craster... Okay, I'll be honest, there's nothing good about this bastard. Of all the deaths in the entire series, his was my favorite. The reason I bring it up isn't because I found it to be a little much, but more so just a warning for everyone who is eager to jump in. After all, if it makes my skin crawl sometimes, then most people might have issues with it. There are a few moments that made me want to kill this little bastard, like this one. Luckily for me, I like a little bit of pepper in my mashed potatoes if you catch my meaning. Or in this case, a cubic fuck-ton. I'm not too worried about this scaring any of you off though. You're all Game of Thrones in hot defense. Hell, half of you probably like Daemon and Rhaenyra's relationship, so this should be a cakewalk by comparison. That's most of it though. I could go into more detail, but I think you'd prefer to enjoy this series as fresh as you can. There are still plenty of moments and characters that I didn't even touch on that I think most of you will still love. So check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. Until next time though, be safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.